Ever want to stand in two states at once while soaking in one of the best views in the Smoky Mountains? Let me show you how at Newfound Gap. Welcome to Bear Facts, where we explore the Smoky Mountains one bear fact at a time. There's something magical about standing at Newfound Gap, where you can breathe in the crisp, cool air and take in the expansive views of the Smoky Mountains that stretch out before you. Visitors are drawn here year-round for so many reasons, whether it's the sweeping panoramic views, the history embedded in the landscape, or the connections to nature that soothes the soul. People from all walks of life come to Newfound Gap to experience the majesty of the mountains in a setting that blends natural beauty with historical significance. At Newfound Gap, you're standing at one of the few points in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park where a road takes you to such a high elevation, making it accessible for everyone, even those who may not want to or be able to hike the rugged trails. Whether you're an experienced hiker or a history buff or just someone looking for a serene place to take in the views, Newfound Gap has something special to offer. For those of you who aren't familiar with Newfound Gap, here's a little bit of info to fill in any gaps, get it, gaps, in your knowledge. Newfound Gap is located right on the Tennessee-North Carolina state line, about halfway between Gatlinburg, Tennessee and Cherokee, North Carolina, at an elevation of 5,046 feet, give or take a foot. It's the lowest drivable pass through the Smoky Mountains, but still offers some of the most breathtaking views in the region. The Newfound Gap Road, also known as US 441, which I've done a video on, cuts through the park and leads visitors straight to this iconic spot. The road itself is an engineering marvel. It winds its way through dense forests, past jaw-dropping vistas, over and under many tunnels, and straddles steep cliffs around sharp curves. The road climbs steep grades until it reaches this high-altitude gap. For many visitors, just the drive alone is a highlight for their trip. Now, this wouldn't be Bear Facts without a few, facts. So here's a little history. Newfound Gap gets its name because it was, newly found. The gap was discovered in the 1870s by Arnold Guyot, a Swiss geographer who was mapping the region. Initially, it was believed that the Indian Gap, a nearby lower pass, was the lowest crossing point of the mountains. However, when Guyot mapped the area, he discovered that Newfound Gap was lower, and thus the Newfound Gap was born. Guyot's discovery may seem small, but it had big implications. This gap became a critical crossing point, and when the national park was established in 1934, the road through Newfound Gap became the primary route for visitors to travel through the park, linking the Tennessee and North Carolina sides of the mountains. Newfound Gap isn't just a pretty view, it holds significant historical importance. In fact, it was here in 1940 that President Franklin D. Roosevelt stood at the Rockefeller Memorial and dedicated the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. This monument was a accumulation of years of effort to preserve the beauty of the Smokies and protect them for future generations. When you visit, you can stand at the Rockefeller Memorial. This is the wall you see by the road. Many guests enjoy walking up to the top and looking out. It's fun to think that you're standing quite literally in the footsteps of history. You can picture the crowd gathering that day, looking out at the mountains, feeling the excitement as the park was officially opened. It's a powerful reminder of how the natural beauty of this area has been cherished for generations and how it's been preserved for us to enjoy today. The road leading to Newfound Gap was one of the most challenging to construct in the early days of the park. Workers had to blast through solid rock, and the unpredictable mountain weather made the task even harder. Yet today, millions of people drive along this road every year, enjoying the fruits of their labor. And Newfound Gap is one of the most popular attractions people can stop and see from Route 441. There are a few good reasons it's so popular. First is the easy access. The viewing area is about 16 miles from Gatlinburg, and the road is well maintained. The parking lot is quite large and visitors can enjoy the views from the parking lot. You can also step down to the walkway just below the parking area to get a better view. There are a few actual steps to get to the walkway, but if you head to the handicap parking area, you can access this lower walkway without having to navigate those steps, which makes it very accessible for all visitors. And even though the parking area is very big, it can fill up. The fall peeping season can be very busy and people come in droves to see the mountains as they change colors. One of the biggest reasons people stop and visit Newfound Gap is for those views. From the observation area, you get a sweeping vista of the Smoky Mountains that stretch for miles. On a clear day, you can see all the way to Mount LeConte, one of the highest peaks in the park. To the south, you're treated to views of Kuhuahi, where Clingmans Dome stands. Clingmans Dome is the highest point in the Smoky Mountains, sitting at 6,643 feet. Although you won't be able to actually see the man-made structure from Newfound Gap, the actual mountain is just across the street. And there's no doubt that fall is the best time to see the vista from Newfound Gap, but any time of the year you get a clear day, it's a good view. Keep in mind that when planning your visit that the mountain view from Newfound Gap is facing east. As you pass noontime in the late fall and winter months, the lighting isn't as good for photography. Many people will also stop at Newfound Gap before taking the 7-mile drive to the top of Kuhuahi. This might be a good idea anyway, since they have a better bathroom situation. Newfound Gap has bathrooms that are open year-round and have running water, though they don't have sinks. You will have still cleaner bathrooms than at Clingmans, which are not open year-round either. Another reason people like to go to Newfound Gap is for access to some pretty good hiking trails. For those who want to get up and close and personal with the mountains, Newfound Gap is a gateway for some fantastic hiking trails. One of the most famous is the Appalachian Trail, which crosses right through Newfound Gap. Imagine standing here and knowing that this same trail stretches all the way from Georgia to Maine. If you're looking for a shorter hike, the nearby trail to Charles Bunyan offers a challenging yet rewarding experience with stunning views of the rugged cliffs and valleys. There is also the option to take the Boulevard Trail, which leads to the top of Mount LeConte for even more breathtaking views. Though the hike is close to 9 miles one way, it can be quite a trip. There are many other trails you can get to from Newfound Gap, which you can find through trail maps such as Google Maps and All Trails. Another fun reason to visit Newfound Gap is that you can stand in 2 separate states at the same time. Newfound Gap is the only place in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park where you can stand on the state line. If you head to the middle of the parking area close to the road, you can find a marker with a viewing platform showing where Tennessee ends and North Carolina begins, making it a popular spot for photographs. Another neat thing about Newfound Gap is that you might get a spot of cell phone reception here. Yes, it might be hard to believe, but you could actually possibly maybe get a tiny bar on your phone. Though you won't be able to stream movies, you might be able to send a text to family at home and showing them the amazing vista you're looking at. It's easy to understand why people are drawn here. There's something awe-inspiring about looking out over such a vast, unbroken landscape of mountains, valleys, and forests. You feel small in the best possible way, as you're part of something much larger than yourself. But Newfound Gap has its challenges, especially if you plan on visiting in the late fall to early spring. And that's the elevation, which is kind of funny since that's a reason people love to visit. But the high elevations also come with weather unpredictability. Newfound Gap experiences weather patterns that are much more like New England than the southern Appalachians. In winter, snow can blanket the gap, turning it into a winter wonderland, while in Gatlinburg it might be sunny and warm. But because the weather can change fast, people can get caught completely unaware. One minute it's a small drizzle and the next you're standing in an inch of ice, wondering how are you going to get to the bottom of this mountain. Motorists who are not used to dealing with ice and snow are often more dangerous than the road itself. And since the park doesn't use salt, for obvious reasons, the road condition can deteriorate quickly. The road trucks will put down cinder, but the weather can move faster than they can keep up with it. When this happens, they close the road down. The road through 441 is shut down frequently in the winter and can be closed for days or even weeks at a time. But even if the road is in good condition, the temperatures in the winter at this elevation can be brutal. Winds will pick up at high speeds, and hikers who are not prepared for these changes can face some dangerous conditions. Just make sure you dress for every possible season: rain, snow, high winds, and sunny days if you plan on visiting Newfound Gap in the winter, because the possibility to experience them is high, especially in the fall to spring months. Another thing to do before visiting is to make sure you have good brakes. The climb to the top is fun, but the drive down is long and steep. Keep your car in low gear and avoid riding the brakes. There aren't always guardrails where you might need them the most. Also, buyer beware. Clouds might look pretty from below, but sitting in them isn't as fun. When you're at that elevation, you might not get the best views, since the clouds tend to enjoy sharing the same space as the mountain tops. Visiting Newfound Gap or even Clingmans sucks when the clouds are sitting at this level. All you see is fog. Keep an eye out for weather and just look up. If there are any clouds at all in the sky, just cross your fingers and hope the clouds are moving away. A side effect of the weather is the constant damage that ice and wind does to the structure. We have never actually been to Newfound Gap without seeing signs of construction or cones to keep people away. Even the Roosevelt platform is showing signs of deterioration. The steps are eroding and there is signs of aging. If you plan on climbing up and around the man-made structure, just keep an eye out for where you're stepping. The last thing to note is that you won't get as many wildlife sightings at Newfound Gap as you will at the lower elevations. Bears are lazy critters and food is scarce in these elevations. The free kind left by people, that is. I'm not saying that you won't see any wildlife, but it's not as common, and we've never actually seen any deer on the road, or bear for that matter, at least at the upper elevations. Lots of crows, but not much else. Newfound Gap is more than just a scenic stop. It's a place where nature, history, and adventure all come together in one breathtaking location. Whether you're driving up for the views, hiking the trails, or soaking in the history, there's always something new to discover here. So, the next time you're in the Smokies, don't just pass through. Take some time to stand on the state line, explore the trails, and appreciate the beauty of Newfound Gap